I'll call the January 7th, 2020 Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start with agenda review.
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda today.
I'll move the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. First order of business is to election of the chair and vice chair. I entertain a motion for the chairman.
I'll move that Vance Sternberger be the chair this year.
Okay,
Second.
is there any discussion? There's no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vance is appointed as the chair. I'll let you take over as the rest of the...
I would take a nomination for vice chair.
I'll move Kip Brender be the vice chair.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Kip. Congratulations, Kip.
Awesome. And thank you, Will, for your last year of service. You did a fine job and was a good leader for this organization the last year. We appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Yep.
It was an honor.
Yeah. You brought us through some hard times. All right. I'm going to start this off by having a small time of silence for the Waseca police officer that got shot last night. You're going to just give me a few seconds of silence here. Thank you very much. Our thoughts and prayers are for the officer, his family, and the city of Waseca. All right. I think the next thing is committee assignments. Bob?
Well, in your packet, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, is a list of committee assignments. There have been a few modifications to this list. There's been some changes amongst some of you. Commissioner Landkamer will now be primary or secondary or alternate on the RETA board to Commissioner People, and then Region 9 Development Commission, I believe Commissioner Landkamer has expressed interest in that since Commissioner Stuenberg is unable to serve on that. And then Commissioner Landkamer asked for a couple of additions to the list, one being the Compassionate Communities and the other being the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. And then I think there was also some discussion about some possible switching of policy committees with AMC that aren't reflected here, but I don't know if Commissioner Brender and Commissioner Landkamer have connected now, or
via email, and I didn't respond to her, but I'm fine with going. I would rather have environmental anyways, so being on planning and zoning rule stuff, I'm okay with that. So
we'll need to make that change that Commissioner Brender will be on the AMC Environmental and Natural Resources Policy Committee, and Commissioner Landkamer will then be on the AMC Health and Human Services Policy Committee.
I had one other that Vance and I have talked about him taking my position on the NACO Justice and Public Safety Steering Committee. You still up for that, Vance?
Actually, I'm doing transportation.
Okay, never mind. Never mind.
I
then.
think I'll hold on transportation for now, and they actually have me in a leadership position there.
Good.
So that would.
Good. So sounds good. No, we'll keep it the way it is then.
Colleen, did you have something you wanted me to take over for you? I remember that last email you sent. Can't remember if you had something you wanted to switch with me.
No.
No.
I made
Okay.
a change on the.
Oh yeah, it's changed here. It's the RETA.
That you wanted me to do?
No.
Okay, you're going to be doing
Yeah.
it. Okay, that's fine. That's good.
I'll move the amended
Committee assignment?
committee assignments. That's very good, Mark. Thank you.
I'll second it.
All right. Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the committee assignments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, you got new committee assignments. Very good. Okay. And if everybody looked over the calendar, I don't think we need a motion on that, do we?
We should adopt the calendar.
Okay. Anybody want to give me a motion to adopt the calendar for 2020?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion from Will, a second from Mark. Any discussion on that? I'm always very appreciative to the staff that they work around AMC and NACO on our calendar. Other boards don't do that and have issues when things come up. So thank you very much for the work that you do to make sure. I know, Jesse, you probably do that, but it really helps us out, the folks that are busy with AMC and NACO. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Second, or against? All right, that passes. Okay. Then we go on. We're going to have our Economic Development Authority annual meeting. We have to cancel our meeting or recess.
I'll move to recess.
Second.
All right. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, our meeting is recessed. I'm going to call to order the Economic Development Authority meeting. First of all, we're going to have an election of officers. Anybody want to make a motion to what's posted?
I'll move the slate.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, that passes. An agenda review, Bob?
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda today.
All right. And the minutes that are attached, anyone want to make a motion on the minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
I'll second them.
All right, got a motion by Kip, a second by Will. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? It passes. All right. Now, we have our RAD application for public housing. And so come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing this morning?
Doing very well.
Another beautiful day out. It's going to get up to 39 degrees today, they say. That's like balmy for us.
Yes.
I like it.
Won't last long.
I know.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Chair Sternberg and members of the EDA, before you today is consideration of a RAD or rental assistance demonstration application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And as we've talked about at prior meetings, the RAD program basically changes the operation of our public housing program from public housing funding to more similar to the voucher program or project-based voucher program. Tenants still pay 30% of their income. That aspect does not change, but instead of receiving public housing funding in the form of an operating subsidy and capital funds, we would be receiving a housing assistance payment from HUD, because we would be entering into a housing assistance payment contract, a HAP contract with HUD for either 15 or 20 years. The reason that we're looking at this is because it is a long-term stable funding source, whereas the public housing funding fluctuates quite a bit and in some years declines significantly, and that can be hard to manage the operations in that with that type of unstable funding. We have been working with the consultant firm RECAP as well as with HUD staff to take a look at the financial feasibility of the RAD program. And basically the preliminary analysis is positive in the sense that RAD funding or the RAD program would lock in the fiscal year 2019 funding level. And that year actually had an increase, and so that kind of sets us up well financially to continue operations. There is a operating cost adjustment formula that is put in place, so it isn't that once that money's locked in, it never changes. There is an adjustment that's done each year. It averages about 2%. So it's not a huge increase, but that it is accounted for. A couple of items that we wanted to bring to your attention specifically are that current tenants are protected under a conversion. There's no rescreening for eligibility criteria. They can stay in their current unit. We're not proposing any changes to ownership of the units or how they're managed or the configuration of our current units. Any rent increase that is due to conversion would be phased in, and that would only happen if somebody is currently paying a flat rent, which means that 30% of their income reaches a level where we've kind of set a flat rent rate. So that could potentially increase, but it would specifically be phased in, meant to see that increase in small amounts over 3 to 5 years. And a major benefit to tenants is that this would open up an option for choice mobility. And what that means is that after a year of being under the RAD program and subject to availability, a tenant could actually take their voucher and choose to move that to a privately owned unit. So it gives them some flexibility in their choice in housing. And we would manage that through our current voucher program, because again, these would be project-based vouchers. So when I say subject to availability, it means as we have the capacity within our voucher program to be able to do that. And then another positive aspect for tenants is that we'll be able to kind of expand our self-sufficiency programs and our voucher home ownership programs. Those will now be options for tenants that are currently under public housing. One thing we wanted to bring to your attention that is just something to be aware of. Any future applicants for this program would then have to meet the voucher income limits. So right now, public housing can serve people that are up to 80% AMI. The voucher program is capped at 50% AMI. So again, it doesn't affect current tenants. They aren't rescreened. Okay. But in the future, that's something that we want to be just aware of, and maybe I think we've talked about working with maybe other developers or things to then meet that gap, because this program would no longer be able to serve people that are earning between 51% and 80% AMI. But again,
Mr. Chair, I have a question. How much money would that be? What would their income have to be under?
Well, it's a sliding scale based on the number of people in the household.
Yeah.
So
let's say 4 or 2.
I'm just totally.
That's okay.
Probably
I was
like
just curious.
$50,000 a year.
Okay.
It'd be the minimum.
Okay.
Would be that higher end
Or
that
the
we're
higher
not
Yeah, that would be
serving anymore.
50% probably.
It would be, it'd be over the 50%.
It'd be
Probably
over the 50%.
Yeah, it could be 60, or probably around 60%, and 80% is really high.
Yeah. I was just wondering with the change to 50%.
And we can provide that at the next update.
Sorry.
That we do. No, don't be sorry.
Yeah.
It's a great question, because it helps gauge, kind of who specifically would no longer fall within the public housing program. So we can get that information.
Great.
That would be good to know.
My question is, why didn't we do this before?
So the program was evaluated, I think back in around 2012. At that time, the way that the program parameters, it really was not deemed an option for either Blue Earth County or Mankato EDAs to do a conversion. HUD has been, I would say, rather rapidly changing the guidelines for how this can operate for housing authorities. And so it then has become a better fit. I mean, there were times where they were really steering it more toward housing authorities whose housing stock was in pretty poor condition, and ours is not. That's not the case for us. But they've really opened up options for housing authorities, and I would say HUD has been pretty clear in guiding us toward, that we should strongly consider this option, because future funding is just unknown, whereas this is more stable. So it just wasn't a good option previously.
In our current funding we get, and you have a certain time frame to spend that money. If you can't spend your capital funds, it goes back to HUD. We're now under this new model. If we don't spend our money, it gets invested and we can use it when we really need it, not when we have to use it so we don't lose it. So it just turns that whole mechanism around.
So basically, they changed the whole RAD system to make it more usable by local governments.
That's correct,
Yeah, that's a good thing.
yes.
And as I understand it, it's a much more stable piece of funding. I know at USDA and at HUD, they've been cutting back on a lot of their funding, so this would be a more stable funding as opposed to what's happening.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you don't mind if I add a couple of more items. So
Please do.
I just wanted to say that if this was approved today, we would plan to apply in February or early February. And additional next steps would be to complete a physical condition assessment or a capital needs assessment of the units. And that actually looks at a 20-year need of physical needs. So it's very comprehensive and looking at a 20-year time frame. We would also be amending our annual and 5-year plan to state, it already says that we're evaluating it, but we would specifically amend it to state that we're proceeding through the process. And then one other thing that we continue to evaluate is another repositioning mechanism called Section 18. It's very similar to RAD in that it converts to project-based vouchers. There are differences related to, instead of setting it at RAD rents, which again basically takes the fiscal year 19 numbers and locks it in, we actually would be able to receive rents that are based on the fair market rent set by HUD, and that would be a higher revenue source or higher rent stream. However, we at this point don't feel fully confident in knowing that there's the same tenant protections as RAD offers, and that's something that we feel strongly is needed. We certainly don't want to cause displacement of anyone, and so we're looking at it, but are holding off on that suggestion until we have confirmed that the tenants are protected in the same way they are for RAD.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So with that section, whatever it is, would that still be 30% of someone's income? It still would be. It wouldn't change that.
That's correct. That aspect of it remains the same. There's the difference is the regulatory mechanism that you use to do the conversion. But so it's still a project-based voucher. The tenant still pays 30% of their income. We still have a housing assistance payment contract with HUD. That part remains the same. It's just the set of rules that you use for that is different. And again, there's definitely positive aspects to it, but we want more solid confirmation on tenant protection before suggesting.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
All right. So you need a motion?
We are requesting a motion to approve, approval of the resolution to be able to submit the application.
I'll move that.
Second. Got a motion from Mark, a second from Will. Any discussion?
It's good direction. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, it sounds like a great program. It's some of the questions were basically so the public understands why we're changing. So thanks for all your hard work on this. All right. No more discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Motion to end this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Right. And now we will go on to our
Mr.
Railroad
Chair.
Authority.
Don't we have to
Maybe
adjourn?
want to take a vote on that then?
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you gotta take a vote.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? I'm jumping ahead of myself here. All right. I'm going to call to order the Railroad Authority annual meeting First out is the appointment of officers.
I'll move the slate.
Second.
Got a motion by Colleen, a second by either Kip or Will.
Give it to Kip.
All right. All right. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? And that passes. Agenda review.
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda today.
Need a motion for the agenda review.
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passes. Approval of minutes.
I'll move the minutes. Second.
I got a motion and a second for the minutes. Minutes are long. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Minutes pass. And I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes. All right. So we're going right on to Public Works. Hi, Ryan.
Morning, Ryan.
Morning, Ryan.
New Year to everybody.
You
Happy
too?
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Well, got a couple of action items for you today and then discussion of several others. The first item for consideration is final payment for the St. Clair Maintenance Building Project. The final payment amount is $81,281.39, and that does include the original contract items as well as 4 contract changes, including addition of panel liner throughout the building and elimination of several things for about $11,000 reduction. Some storm sewer outlet alterations that were necessary as we encountered things that weren't anticipated below the ground. That was $4,500. Addition of metal liner panel to the outside of the office and the shop, that was $1,700. And soil corrections and sand backfill, that was $15,600. So with that being said, I would recommend final payment for this fantastic shop project that's been completed and we're happy to have.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Very nice operation.
Yeah, it's good over there. It'll be good.
Well, it's well needed, and all of us that have been in that shop before understands how well needed it was.
Yes, we were very appreciative of it.
So,
Okay.
any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Second. Against? It passes.
All right.
Sitting here the first time, you got to start.
Gotta get your routine
Got to
going.
get the routine going, I tell you. Okay.
All right, our second action item today is consideration of a resolution for local bridges replacement. This is an update to the previously approved 2018 resolution. This includes new deficient bridges, bridges with low sufficiency ratings, and other bridges with anticipated replacement in the coming years. We have also taken off the bridges that have been completed since 2018. The document, it does include proposed construction year for approximately the first third of the bridges, and that's based off our draft capital improvement plan replacement funding that's been programmed in each of those years. We will still require additional external bridge bonds funds or federal funds to continue to replace bridges at the desired rate. So I'd recommend approval.
So this is a 5-year. I see there's a future in there. Does that go beyond 5 years?
This is need beyond 5 years. The proposed construction year again is, as I break out our funding, I try to allocate a portion towards bridge replacement funds that's coming from either our local state aid or our local option sales tax dollars, knowing that our bridge bond funds have been far less than consistent in the past. We're trying to leave ourselves some capital so that we have flexibility in getting critical bridges replaced with those other funding sources as needed, so that we're not completely dependent on the legislature for those funds. Right. So it does program some money that we try to set aside to keep at least some bridges being replaced, but it does not fully meet the need.
I got more questions, but I'll wait for the motion.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. My question on this is, so I'm looking at a total of 18,260,000,
Correct.
and that runs up to how many years?
It's so highly dependent on when we get the funding.
But
So some of
what
the.
are you considering, next 20 years, next 10 years?
No, I would say the next, this is a 5 to 10 year list.
A 5 to 10 year list,
Yes.
so only in Blue Earth County, we're sitting at 18,260,000
Correct.
bridges alone.
So what we use this as a tool is obviously for, as you're aware, we use it for legislative purposes. This is reported to the state as far as the total need. We look at bridges that may not be deficient yet or may not have a low enough sufficiency rating to qualify for funding, but we look at them and they have maybe severely poor geometrics. They may have timber piles that are beginning to show significant signs of delay, things of that nature, where we can certainly anticipate within the next 5 to 10 years, those out on the future list, we're keeping a closer eye. We're starting as we develop plans to get them on the list for funding. Those are kind of our next batch of ones that we want to get plans developed for.
Shovel ready.
Any other discussion on this? Thank you very much, Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? It passes.
Okay. And for informational items, as always, please feel free to jump in with questions as we go through. Our construction projects updates. It's cold outside. We're not doing much for construction, but our County Road 1 project, Old Highway 66, still has some remaining punch list items, as you may be aware. ADA pedestrian ramps with truncated domes need to go in at intersections along the trail. Driveway and curb repairs. There's minor grading, shaping, turf establishment, things like that would be expected. And then in addition, we also need to put up the community garden fencing next spring. We are working, there was a grant available that the community garden folks had, so we're working with the contractor to try to get pricing for either inclusion of their grant and purchasing new fencing compared to putting up the old fencing that's in pretty poor shape. We already have a bid item to salvage and reinstall the old fencing that could be used as a credit on the contract, so we're working on that with the contractor. Surcharge 2 still needs to be placed. That's still pending the Army Corps of Engineers permit. They did send a no adverse effects determination letter to SHPO. SHPO disagreed with that, so we're waiting to see the Corps' response to that. We're going to remain hopeful that we'll get approvals and be ready to proceed with that surcharge in the spring, which then again pushes the next stage of the project off, likely to 2021.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
how long does SHPO have to respond to that?
Their period has already,
Expired?
30-day period. And SHPO did respond, but now
No,
we're waiting
but-
on the Corps to respond back to SHPO. And we're hopeful that they'll stick to their guns. They've done a significant amount of research and investigation into it, so it's.
Okay.
I have a question.
You go right ahead.
Did SHPO say what their,
I think their concern was on the breadth of the survey limits. They wanted more area evaluated.
okay.
Basically what we proposed was to put the road on top and build a mound to contain the ditch instead of excavating a ditch, so that we weren't disturbing any, if there were remaining artifacts. And the Corps agreed that that would be a good solution instead of us excavating, and because we don't have anywhere really else to go with the road, we're pinched on both sides between either the 160-foot high slope or the Missouri River floodplain. So as a mitigation, they were in agreement that that was a minimized adverse impacts. SHPO didn't agree to the extent, so I guess they're doing their jobs, but it does conflict with our prerogative in trying to get something constructed and something done for the public.
Do they have a suggestion?
No.
Okay.
So that's for the area just south of County Road 90, correct?
Just as you north of 9, as you come down the surcharge that we've already placed through the chute, and as you come around that first corner, there where the old township road would be, that you would go to the right to go to the Kern Bridge. as you come around that corner, that's like a 20-mile-an-hour corner, we were going to pull onto a new alignment at that point to get to the 45-mile-an-hour design standard. That's where that surcharge has to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's holding everything up.
It is.
I know I'm already hearing from neighbors in church about when is that road going to be completed, and
We're remaining hopeful that we can put that next contract out in for 2021, pending obviously the surcharge being placed and appropriate settlement rate and consolidation of the underlying soil.
all right.
So we're very frustrated with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. The Kern Bridge removal and salvage, we're working with our structural engineer and the contractor's consultant structural engineers to finalize the PIC lift plan, the structural engineering drawing, so they've got to account for all of the weight so that they can rig the cranes appropriately and have the correct size of chains and cables and spreader bars, etc. So they're going through and they submit their plan, and then our structural engineer has been reviewing that, providing comment back where he agrees or disagrees. So we would anticipate that they'll start the cofferdam into the river fairly soon, so the access road, so that they can set a crane in the middle of the river.
Wow.
And the PIC was tentatively scheduled for the end of this month. Again, that's pending weather and final approval of these submittals. So you get into the end of January, I don't know that much is guaranteed, but we'll knock on wood that it stays like it is now.
Right. I mean, you'll let us know. And
yeah, absolutely. We'll let you know. And we've got a pretty healthy list of people that are very interested in this. I know the state wants to do some video footage and recording the PIC, so hopefully all goes well. And
I plan to sell refreshments there and stuff.
Food truck down.
Yeah.
we can make a day of it. Planning projects updates. County State Aid Highway 10 from the Blue Earth River to 1. Plans are into MnDOT for final approvals, and the tentative plan is to open bids February 26 and award the first board meeting in March. 27 from 17 to 2, plans are at 90%. Right-of-way meetings are beginning. The Army Corps of Engineers permit was recently submitted. The bid date on that's going to be pending right-of-way and permit approval. We had some delays with some of the drainage challenges out there, and there are a lot of residents along that project, residents and landowners. So our plan is to have both Jack and Ryan working on right-of-way acquisition, but it's going to be tight, and it will likely trickle into next year's construction as well. And not the end of the world, given the fact that that project's 5.5 miles long. We can construct in segments to try to minimize disruptions, but my goal is to get that out under contract this year and get some of the work commencing. In addition to the work that has to be completed by our contractor, there are utility relocations along the entire project. So it's a big bite, and our goal is to still get it out under contract yet this year, but we may have to plan for some of the work again to happen in 21. Looking forward to having that completed. County State Highway 1 in Good Thunder, the project from west limits to the City Hall, I believe, is Ewing Street, about a 4-block project, again driven by the city's need to replace their water main that's severely deteriorated. The project open house meeting will be January 29th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. in the Good Thunder City Hall. And the project plans are at approximately 75%. We intend to bid and award that in early spring. Things are moving right along, so pending no hiccups, we should be good to go there. We are meeting with the city, I believe, next week to discuss traffic impacts, because with 10 under construction and closing this leg of 1 down, there's not a lot of good alternatives, as Will is surely aware, to get that traffic through town for that couple of months while we got to tear everything up.
Yep.
So we're going to have to go to the drawing board. 41, bridge replacement plans are at 90%. The Corps permit has been submitted. The project memorandum has been submitted, again required for federal aid that we're receiving on the bridge. The archaeological phase 2 investigation was completed with the Minnesota DOT CRU's recommendation of no further investigation necessary was sent to the SHPO, so they didn't find anything relevant, which is good news.
Yeah.
1 from 9 to 90, again, we talked about that. That's pending the surcharge. We're chipping away at some of the right-of-way there, and it's somewhat on hold until that surcharge is placed, knowing we've got time, we've got other pressing priorities. 82 Victory Drive from the roundabout at Stadium, our county stated Highway 60 to the north. We've sent a consultant engineering request for proposals that should be due back for January 24th for design services. Our intent in scoping that was that we would plan on reconstruction from the roundabout to the north, coming just south of the Hoffman Road intersection, staying out of the turn lanes and signalization, knowing that requires significant new signals as well as alterations to the geometry of that intersection with the ice study that was completed a year ago. So we didn't want to get into that intersection, and fiscally we're going to about the limits where we think we can afford to reconstruct under this project, and then looking at future projects to continue with Victory North.
So is it looking positive for like a trail or something along there?
Well, and that's one of the things we included in the RFP was consideration. You know, I think we'll end up having to urbanize that section, which should tighten things up, and obviously eliminating the ditch would give us space. The other thing we did talk about previously was having the consultant engineer evaluate whether or not a 3-lane segment would work from the roundabout north to Balserzak, which is right now where we don't have a trail and where we're pinched for right of way. Given the fact you really only have.
That's where we always hear the background from the city is, you know, that area.
And I was just thinking the same thing as I was driving along there in the last snowstorm, and there was a gentleman walking on the shoulder of the road there. Yes, we certainly want to get trail and pedestrian facilities constructed through there. So we're going to look at feasibility, how will the road operate, what's the cost and benefit of both alternatives.
That's good.
But very expensive projects when you start building in city limits and add the storm sewer and the curb and gutter, the scoping. The total cost per mile goes up considerably compared to a rural highway. And then the County Road 169 bridge replacement project, that's kind of one of our top bridges for replacement. The plans were approved, right-of-way is needed, and we're evaluating where we can fit that into a very busy construction program this year. We'd still like to get that out.
The Riverfront and Highway 14.
Did I skip over that one?
I think you did.
I did.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I checked it off too early. Thank you for catching that.
I was thinking either that or I'm just getting old, I forgot. But
I was testing you.
that too. Are we talking 2021 on that?
Yep, that's still scheduled for 2021. So we're working with MnDOT, District 7, and central office staff, and there's been a lot of back and forth regarding the final geometrics, and it's primarily around the northwest corner as the southbound 57 traffic comes in. Our hope was for a free right scenario where the free right would be able to go on to Highway 14 and then we'd have a through motion. They didn't like that. They wanted a wider throat where it's all kind of a yield right. That yielded too fast of entry speeds into the roundabout. So we're actually proposing a little bit of a pork chop to go in there of a curve island that would also have an increased pedestrian benefits. So we're going back and forth, and it's D7 and central office are kind of having to do a lot of inner coordination. So we're a little farther behind on them kind of getting together on what they're both willing to agree to. But I think in the end it'll be okay because we shouldn't have as much back and forth on the back end. What we send in should be what everybody is agreed to. But that's one of the challenges with these full trunk highway review projects is you have to get blessings from on high at central office for everything.
And that again, go ahead.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I was to say that could slow it down a little bit. You gotta get the central office.
But I know talking with our design consultant Bolton and Mink on that project, they still think we're in good shape, and they're moving forward with some of the other non-critical design elements. We've completed geotechnical investigations. We've done some of the contaminated soils work that was necessary, and they're still moving forward with some of the work that they can. I know another critical item will be, not for us as much, but in the design, the driveway to the novelty store and the Lucina siding building. The Lucina entrance is way too close to the roundabout, so the goal is to consolidate those two. There's actually city right-of-way for an alleyway through there, so Michael with the city is working with those two businesses trying to consolidate that access point because it's an alteration, but it's necessary to the critical performance of that intersection, and MnDOT has said so as well.
You mentioned pedestrian crossing. Is there a possibility of getting like a light situation where a pedestrian can push a button and?
So I've talked with MnDOT about that, and I get mixed results. In general, they're not in favor of those because their belief is that it takes the driver's attention away from the geometrics and everything going on with the roundabout and focuses on that light. So there will be some pedestrian improvements, including the islands. On the north side, there's actually a short trail that'll be extended south on the east side of the road so that we can bring the pedestrians, instead of crossing in front of CenterPoint's driveway right now where there's pedestrian crossing, we're going to bring them to the south to the roundabout, and then they'll cross in the roundabout, so they'll have shorter crossing distances. I think right now it's almost 50 feet across at high speeds. We're going to bring them down to the roundabout where things are slowed down and they're only crossing 1 to 2 lanes at most, and then they'll have refuge points.
Yeah, if I have any complaints on roundabouts, it's pedestrians and bicycles.
Yep.
That's you know, I still would like to see what your plans are on Victory Drive and our stadium and pole. I'm thinking up there might be a better idea with a lighting system because you don't have the highway. You know, you don't have faster speeds.
We're looking at RFBs there, and I've spoken with Michael at the city because the city's leading the design on that project. We have talked about that. And then in addition, you know I had shared the pedestrian safety handbook and some of the features that they recommend are kind of inherently part of roundabout design, so that's the good thing. But I do agree there are still concerns about high traffic volumes and pedestrians in roundabouts, and we are looking at those. We do want to do further research to make sure we're not creating a hazard situation by putting a rectangular rapid flashing beacon in. And
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Miscellaneous items, Rapid and Dam apron repair damages. I'm hoping to get a final draft letter to FEMA today with attachments. They've requested several additional items, more information, so I'm expounding in the letter, hoping to get that out to them actually today. The draft is sitting on my desk ready to go, so it just needs to be scanned and uploaded. I would anticipate one more round of revision prior to our deadline, which is middle to late this month. I think it was the 16th or the 19th. So we're moving forward on that. I don't know what our success likelihood is, but I know if we don't turn it in, it'll be zero. So we're going to take a shot at trying to get some money to go back in and fix the apron. And then, as we discussed, in addition to fixing the apron and trying to return it to its pre-existing condition with the uplift forces generated by the flows and with the spring pressure that we're getting from underneath, our goal is to actually anchor it down with some rock anchors that are a grouted cable that would go about 30 to 40 feet deep into the substrate on about a 15-foot spacing. But that's about $1 million worth of additional work that we're requesting to try to nail it down and hold it. So we'll see what FEMA states. You know, at some point in time, a larger overreaching study might be the next step, but we're going to see because obviously this work still has to be coordinated with the FERC. Because of the timing of this all, we haven't had that opportunity. We've been in coordination with the dam operator, Eagle Creek, but the FERC may have other concerns that we'll have to incorporate. So it's a bit of a moving target, but we're doing our best to run with it. And then the last item I had for discussion was the Bray Park campground expansion. We had previously discussed this item, and I think in concept the board indicated that the option one, which showed 37 additional campsites north of the caretaker's residence, basically across where the caretaker's road comes out into the main park road. And I have that with me if anybody would like to look at it again, if you don't recall off the top of your head. But there's the grassy area on the north side of the main entrance road to the park. Utilizing that, it looked like we could fit, with the concept, we had 37 additional sites in that spot. At a cost of $472,000 was what was estimated, and based on occupancy rates and campground charges, we were at like a 5.5-year return on investment from camping dues. The Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Outdoor Recreation Grant Program is now soliciting for applications. Their goal is to increase and enhance outdoor recreation facilities in local community parks throughout the state. This is the same program we used to purchase the guaranteed sand and gravel and Sanger pit. The program provides up to 50% of the cost for development or acquisition, and campgrounds are an eligible item. The maximum grant amount is $250,000, which fortunately for us is about half of our project cost. It's probably on the bigger end of the asks, but the program requires that the campgrounds comply with DNR general requirements for recreational camping. I did speak with Audrey Malari, who is the program administrator, and did confirm that those requirements would be applicable to the new sites that we develop and not the entire campground, because I was concerned that the campsites, especially along the lake, which are very compact, would probably not meet that requirement right now for spacing and size. I'm very confident they wouldn't. They have to have at least 10 feet between each unit, and I think 2,000 square feet of area per campsite, which I know those wouldn't meet it, because I would struggle. I think any three of us might struggle to fit our RV on one of those sites. So
I think I'd have a real hard time even with my small one.
Yep. The program uses LawCon, and this is for fiscal year 2021 funds, and it looks like there could be up to $1.5 million available. So the deadline is March 27th, 2020. The awarded projects are to be announced sometime in the summer of this summer. The application deadline may require us to get external assistance for putting the proposal together, given we're still wrapping up. Corey's still working on the Parks of Regional Significance application. So if this is something that we'd like to move forward with this year, I think we would look externally in having somebody assist us. The last time we did the application for the guaranteed sand and gravel, it cost us a little over $5,000 for the application. So I would assume in that similar ballpark, if we want to delay a year for the application and do it ourselves, I certainly think we're capable of doing so. And putting an application in next year, I think we could start developing that application over the winter. I'm afraid we may not hit the target of this March with the staffing and the workload we have. So I'm putting it out to the board for discussion of is this something you'd like us to apply for, which would obviously potentially obligate us, if we get this money for 2021, would also obligate us budgetarily to the other half of the project that is not in the current budget. That would be a $250,000. Would you like to see us wait another year and develop the application in-house and give us perhaps more opportunity to budget for the other half of it? I'm here for the discussion of it. Where would the board like to see this go? Or
Mr. Chair, so the 472 was 5.5 year payback on the whole 472, or
that was using some calculations of approximate rates of how many people occupy the campground, and assuming that we wouldn't have any attrition by adding more campsites.
How challenging is it to get the other 250,000 in the 21 budget? My thought process is we wait another year to give us more time to calculate the 250. If we have to do the whole 450, we're looking at 3 or 4 years of planning anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
So I certainly would support just kind of keeping it in-house, unless you think there's going to be a thought of that grant going away.
I mean, you
never know. It's a year every year.
Solicited pretty routinely, and again, I just wanted to make the board aware that this opportunity is out there, and we could start thinking about it for future years if this is still something the board wanted to do. I know when we discussed it, I think the idea was generally well received, but the cost is, I certainly respect it.
Factor.
A major factor in our very skinny parks budget. I certainly understand that, and just wanted to offer this opportunity up.
And I think it would be beneficial to get some more input. I mean, people would like the park to be bigger, but people would like the park to stay the same. So, I mean, it's all about change and different things happening.
Right.
So
and that park is in your district.
Yep.
And I sure appreciate that.
Any thoughts from the park board on this? I mean, they haven't talked about this grant part, I would imagine.
We talked about the additional sites, and I think they were generally supportive.
Supportive of it,
okay. On the park board as well. Commissioner Campbell previously did. I think they generally are supportive, and one benefit would also be that while it would provide more work for the caretaker, it would also provide more revenue to perhaps make that position a bit more lucrative because of the sharing of the camping fees, et cetera. So.
Well, I certainly would not have an issue. I mean, this discussion just started several months ago, and this is a big undertaking with the parks budget that is very small. And, you know, more planning does just make a lot of sense. It's been working really well the way it is. I want to put in a good application if we're going to put one in. So if we were going to move forward, I certainly would not recommend just getting someone at our staff to get one in. I would pay the $5,000 to have somebody do it. But I'm certainly comfortable with leaving it go until next year, get ahead of it, get this other grant done, and just keep working it forward. And then if it is something we want to move forward with, we can a 22, 23 project and give us some time to build up that, find the money for the other 250.
Yep, I certainly respect that.
I agree with you. My only thing is if we could get it in this year and we didn't get accepted, we probably would get accepted next year.
We could continue to fine tune, but
I
thought about that too, but
that's my only thing.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about almost $500,000, $5,000 doesn't seem like too much.
Well, and I'm not worried about the 5,000.
No,
I'm more worried about if we do get it, where do we come up with the 250,000 to fund the other half? We're only 1 year out.
And we haven't budgeted for it.
Yeah. So I think my preference would be just to hold it in-house. I mean, even if you want to get some professional help for $5,000 next year, I don't have a problem with that.
And we can
grant.
certainly start thinking about it, and I think I like the idea of a public survey that may help bolster our application in the future. Perhaps I can work with Amy on developing a survey
get some sort of
and do something over the summer.
Have the caretakers ask more questions. I try to get out there a couple times in the summer, and while you guys are out there camping, ask around and see what the thoughts of the, again, the people that are there and have their spot. I got mine, how you doing? But
I know from a reservation standpoint, it's very, very popular, and there are very, very, very many people that are very, very upset.
Would like to get in there.
Didn't get in, so I can.
But the ones that are there sure like the.
Oh, absolutely! It's a great campground.
So it's. It'll give us some time to research it.
I like the idea of having extra year planning too. I think we'd probably come out with a better project.
Yeah.
If we take
I
a little
agree.
extra time.
Yeah. Doesn't hurt to do it that way.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
For me, I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
Quite a bit.
Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Ryan?
I'd like to talk offline later about the transportation lights.
Sure. Would you like to give me a buzz?
Yep.
Okay.
Probably tomorrow, it won't be today.
Good. Yeah.
Or whenever, we'll connect.
Sounds good.
I'll send you an email.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Everybody doing okay?
I'm fine.
Yeah?
Okay. Michael?
Pass that over to Jesse. Morning, Mike.
Morning, Michael.
Morning, Michael.
All right, Mr. Chair, I've got 2 items for you today. We are going to start out with page 41, tab 7 of your packet, and this is a request for resolution to approve a elections equipment grant for 2020. So if you recall, in 2017, the legislature appropriated about $7 million for assistance to counties in purchasing elections equipment. They re-upped that in 2019 with a $2 million grant amount that counties are eligible for. And so what this application will request our portion of that, which will be at least $28,000 if every jurisdiction applies like they did in 2017. And it allows us to use that $28,000 for a 75% match on our poll pads or a 50% match on ballot tabulators. As we discussed earlier, or late last year, a couple months ago, we talked about the equipment that we're purchasing for 2020. We did go forward with most of that purchase for our precinct and our precinct level and our central count tabulators. But because this grant was in its works and we were expecting it to come back, I held back on my poll pad purchase to try to leverage the grant. And so we do have that purchase still hanging out there, and we do have some funds budgeted for it in 2020, but this grant will help make that cost a lot less for our county, since it is a $3 to $1 match. So what we would be looking for is if the board approves this grant and we are awarded it, we would use that to purchase the poll pads that we were planning on purchasing for the 2020 election. Instead of purchasing the 25, we'll be able to get 33 of them. And instead of it being a cost of around $30,000 for the county, it would be about a $12,000 cost instead. So made a lot of sense for me to withhold that purchase and just use the $20, assuming we can authorize this grant and we can get it granted to us. So that's item number 1. I don't know if there's any questions on that. Otherwise, we would just need authorization to submit the application and to get the resolution signed.
I'll move approval. Second.
Got a motion by Kip, second by Mark. Any discussion? Any discussion?
It's a good
All in
idea.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passes.
Thank you. All right, and then moving on to the next item that we have for you. This is an update to the services agreement that we have with the City of Mankato. For many election cycles now, Blue Earth County has provided elections administration service to the City of Mankato for their polling places and for their voters for the elections. And this agreement is an update and pretty significant change in the structure of the agreement. The services are not changing. We're still going to provide the same level of administrative support and essentially managing their elections for the city residents. What we're doing is we're trying to change the pricing structure that we have for it and the compensation that the county receives for it. We had some assistance from administrative intern that Bob had a couple of years ago in gathering some of the data on what it truly costs to administer an elections in Blue Earth County. And we wanted to make sure that we had a more fair split of those costs with the City of Mankato. So what I'll do is I'll very quickly walk you through some of the substantive changes of the agreement, and then we'll spend most of our time talking about the elections cost piece there. So as I said, the roles are not changing at all. We're just adding clarity in that, and that's why they were pulled out in the appendixes there. So if you want to really see what goes into the split of the work for elections, you can look at that. But that service level is really not changing for us. What we're essentially saying is that we want to provide all of that work, all of that service, and be compensated at one amount annually and have that be consistent year to year. We do add a little extra obligation for them in helping locate polling places. That is an expectation we're putting out there with the redistricting that's going to occur after the census here, and the fact that we're going to have to locate some new polling places. The city just has some public buildings that are available to them that I think could be helpful for polling locations, so we did bring that in there. But otherwise, that part of the agreement stays pretty similar. The elections cost piece is where we get into a more significant change. As I mentioned, this is now going to be considered all-inclusive. For the last several elections, we had a flat rate, and then we billed them back for a lot of administrative expenses, ballots, postage, renting a U-Haul truck, and that became quite cumbersome for us just to manage those individual $100 invoices, $80 invoices, have finance bill it back, try to get a check cut and whatnot. So after doing some of that analysis and having Caltrina's assistance on that, we came up with what we felt was a fair rate to apply so that we can just collect that in one sum in advance as part of this agreement. So we are changing their cost quite significantly, where they will be paying $70,000 in 2020, $80,000 in 2021, $95,000 in 2022, and $105,000 in 2023 to cover an all-inclusive elections cost for them. There is some caveats built into that. If there's a special election that's solely at their request or something that they're choosing to do outside of our normal elections activities, we can charge back for that. But this concept of a flat rate gives them some budgeting stability, gives us some budgeting stability, and then saves an awful lot of administrative work, which we're looking forward to. For your information, those costs, if you add them together across a 2-year election cycle, will equate to about half of the costs that we attribute budgetarily to elections administration in Blue Earth County, which we felt was a pretty fair split of that when we consider some of the other compensation we receive from the townships and from the other cities, and then also just our obligations in administering the elections for county offices and whatnot. So in conversations with the city, we felt like that was a pretty good split of that, of those costs. The agreement is tied to a 4-year period. That gives us the ability to come back and decide if it really doesn't work well for us, but I expect it'll work well for us, and this upcoming presidential year will be a really good test of that. That is what I've got there. If you've got any questions, if you want to see any of the figures or want me to dive any deeper into any of those portions, I would be happy to do that. It's been reviewed by the county attorney's office. We've had conversations with the city, so we're kind of just here for your your comment and your acceptance of that. Eventually, a signature by the chair.
You receive a motion?
Also move.
Got a motion from Mark, a second from Will, in discussion?
I have a question. What about the school district? Are they doing their, I know that they were changing things. Are we going to do their elections also?
Yeah.
Because they went to the even year?
Yep, so it's been a long-standing practice that if the school districts fall on the even year regular election calendar, they can roll that in as part of our election. And that's because the law is written as such as that their offices just fall on the ballots that they fall on. We still do bill them back for their portion of the ballot and for some of those costs. It just is going to be a lot more economical for them now because they don't have to completely mobilize an election service. They just get to pay for ballot space essentially now. So yeah, so they'll still pay, but just at a lower rate because it's part of our bigger election now in years.
So by them moving into the even year, it's actually saved the taxpayers money?
Absolutely.
A lot.
Would be a lot. How much were they actually, or not actually, but kind of roughly what looking at with them folded into that?
Yeah, I don't have a good number off the top of my head.
Curious.
Yeah.
It would be a lot. Significantly less.
Yeah, significantly less for them. They're not mobilizing election judges, polling places, equipment, ballot programming. I could go down a laundry list of things that they now have the county doing on
Just figure the name on the ballot. That's how it's right there. The names.
Yeah.
And another question, a different question. I know there's been some discussion about the presidential election. Is it going to be delayed or anything like that?
The nominating primary?
Yeah.
The presidential nomination primary? Yeah, so what I think you're referring to is the lawsuit that was brought by one candidate who wished to be on the Republican ballot, who was not selected to be on that ballot by the Republican Party. My understanding is that they are hoping that does not delay even the ballot printing part of our process. We have ballot proofs waiting for the court to act hopefully very soon on Thursday. The hearing in front of the Supreme Court will be on Thursday morning. We start voting next Friday.
I know.
And so giving me a little bit of heartburn, just a little bit. But we hope to have those ballots ready to go. It shouldn't delay the actual primary itself. Where we might have a little bit of problem is if somebody shows up on Friday morning next week wanting to cast one of the very first ballots in the nation, which we can be proud of, but it might just be an emergency ballot if there would be some change that the Supreme Court orders.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Passes.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for all your hard work on this. All right.
Now let's take a 5-minute break.
Now let's take a 5-minute break.
Sure, I'll probably miss it.
I guess we'll call it back to order again after our break. We go into administrative services.
Mr. Chair, the first item is county board minutes for December 17th.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Colleen, second by Mark. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passed.
Next are the bills for the 3 weeks indicated.
I'll move the bills.
Second?
Got a motion from Will, second from Colleen. Any discussion on the bills? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passed. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 11 in your packet is the Human Resources agenda. We do have one action item for the board's consideration today, and that is a request to initiate recruitment for a legal assistant in the county attorney's office. This is would be a new position intended to assist the assistant county attorneys in the office in terms of some of the case processing that they have to do. The county attorney has indicated that this would allow the shifting of some workload between the legal assistants and away from some of the assistant county attorneys so that the assistant county attorneys would have more capacity to deal with supporting either county departments or other legal matters within the office. And so we're bringing it forward here for the board's consideration today.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Got a motion from Kip, a second from Mark. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That passes.
Under informational items, then, we have a promotion of a heavy equipment operator in the Public Works Department to the road supervisor position. And as a result of that promotion, we've initiated recruitment for a heavy equipment operator. We also had a voluntary demotion of the road and shop supervisor to a medium equipment operator. And then we filled a nurse position within the mental health center, as well as a care coordinator in our public health department. We've also filled a custody officer position and a financial assistance specialist. So active time for our human resources department. And then lastly, a promotion of a custody officer to a new position in the community corrections department as an assistant probation officer. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has on any of these items.
Any questions?
No questions, just a comment. Congratulations to Marvin, been with the county a long time.
Yep.
He's plowed the roads over in my area for me, so I hope I don't miss him. I hope I don't get the same plowing, because he's done a great job all these years. So, but good for him. He's been in the system for a long time. And
His father would be proud.
yep.
Yeah.
And I met with this new custody officer, John Frid, yesterday morning.
Oh.
He seems like a very nice young man. Came from MSU. Been here for quite a while, and I think he'll do a good job.
Mr. Chair, and it's nice to see the ability for upward mobility
Well-
within the county.
Well,
I think that's a real positive
and I had a
thing.
discussion with him on that,
Yeah.
and told him that, you know, he obviously has taken law enforcement. He went through the law enforcement program at MSU, and I'm sure he's looking to have a road position someday. And I told him how many of our deputies actually were jailers at one time. So he seemed interested in that. Seems to like the Mankato area. So.
I started out working in the jail,
Did you?
40-some years.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, we worked part-time in the jail, part-time on the road.
Wow.
They got horses back then.
Yeah.
Hey, I was there too. I started out as a dispatcher jailer in Wilkin County, Minnesota, so I understand those things. Okay.
All right, Mr. Chair, item number 12 in your packet is the annual crop damage payment schedule that we bring forward for the board's consideration. We have run these yields and prices past our county extension agent for input, and so there have been just a couple of minor adjustments to the price for soybeans and maybe some of the yield on, I believe, wheat or something. So then the CRP acres, that rate did get adjusted a little bit as well. But, you know, we have made changes if the price or yield estimates change dramatically during the year, but this at least gives our farmers some idea what those damages might look like.
I move approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Will, second by Kip. Any discussion? Now, we talked to Bob about this yesterday, and I know we had our people go through and do a pretty good check on making sure the prices were accurate. And that's important to me, important to the farmers across the county. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? That passes.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, then item number 13 in your packet is the 2020 publisher bids. We have 6 different areas that we'll need motions on in terms of publications. We did go out for bids, and you'll notice that the low bids in most of these are indicated as the recommendation in the various areas. I will point out that item number 6 in the insertion rate, we're required to choose 2 papers, and so Just bringing each one of these forward for consideration by the board, starting with the delinquent tax list.
All right, let's have a motion on the delinquent tax list.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'm not gonna go through my yearly talk on this like everybody here.
Why don't
except
you
for
do
maybe-
that this year, Mr.
Duly
Chair?
noted.
Yeah.
But everybody understands what my feeling on these are, but so be it. We've got state law to work with. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passes. Let's do a motion on the Board of Commissioner and Board of Equalization summaries with Maple River Messenger being the lowest bid.
Second.
Got a motion by Kip, second by Mark. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? It passes. Need a motion on the legal notices for the year
So moved.
2019.
So,
Got a motion by Colleen, second by Mark,
Or
or
by Will.
Will. I'm sorry. My hearing
For the Mankato Free Press.
for the Mankato Free Press. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passes. Got a motion for the layout for Mankato Free Press for the annual financial statement.
So moved.
second?
Got a motion by Mark, second by Colleen. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That one passes. A motion for the printing of the annual financial statement for the Mankato Free Press.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Kip, second by Mark. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? And now we have a motion for the insertion rate for the annual financial statement for both the Mankato Free Press and the Maple River Messenger.
So moved.
Second it.
A motion by Colleen, second by Mark. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That one passes. I think we got them all.
Okay.
I'll make my small statement saying I don't think that these things should be necessary because everybody can get these online. And the county and the taxpayers are spending a lot of money for something that we shouldn't have to do, but that's the end of my statement.
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, item number 14 is a resolution regarding bounties for golfers. The rate is unchanged at $1 for per pocket golfer or $1 per 13-line ground squirrel for 2020.
I'll move the bounties.
Second.
Got a motion from Will, a second from Kip.
We always try to figure out, there's no way to really get a count, like, I don't know, the townships, I don't know, I think.
I thought we designated
Yeah, we do.
Jesse Anderson.
Yeah, I
to
thought
the
Jesse was supposed to
Don't they
find out.
bring their little feet in or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Tails for the ground squirrels,
Yep.
feet for the pocket gophers.
To the townships.
Through the township.
Darn
Let
it.
them bury the.
Darn.
I was just kind of curious.
And the
what
total
kind of-
amount last year was?
$57.
Oh my gosh.
$57?
You knew we were gonna ask that question.
Yeah. No, I knew the answer. I just like. All right. Any more discussion?
How can there be?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? It passes.
Item number 15 in the packet is a memo regarding the small cities revolving loan and ditch balance loan interest rates. We have a policy that established that the interest rate shall be 0.5% less than the prime rate. At this point in time, the prime rate has dropped, so we previously had a rate of 5%. The recommendation this year is 4.25%.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? It's a pretty good interest rate. I think that should help people out, help some of the small cities out. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That one passes.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 16 in your packet is a memo regarding Commissioner Stuenberg's interest in pursuing candidacy for the AMC second vice president role. And so looking for county board support for that candidacy.
Move approval?
Second.
I got a motion from Will, second from Colleen. I think I'll stay out of this vote. So, but all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. I appreciate your support.
Item number 17 in the packet then is a 2020 Emergency Management Performance Grant. This is a grant that we've received previously. It is for the amount of $37,385. Actually, is this a 20 or is this a?
It's a 19.
19 through,
cycle.
Yeah, it's an odd cycle. January 19 through January of 2020.
I'll move approval.
Okay, you got a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seems like a really strange that it goes from January 1st to January 31st.
Yeah.
There
I mean,
were
that's
some
like-
issues processing it this year, Mr. Chair, and so typically it goes Jan 1 to December 31, but because of the timing and they knew that the county boards wouldn't see it until January, they extended the time to January 31st is what I was told.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passes. All right. We got through there. And now we have our commissioners' reports on committees. Mark, you want to start us off?
I got a big one. Maybe somebody else does, but I don't.
I don't.
I don't either.
Holiday season comes
Yeah,
upon us.
I just had on the
Once a year.
18th of December RCF, and it kind of reorganized, and we have, well, it's changing a little bit. It's made up really of county board members, because you have Blue Earth, Wotton, and Martin County's involved with. There's a state grant that, or some money that RCF got for development in the 9-county area, and so yeah, it's changed the board. Actually, business people involved, entrepreneurs, will be on like an advisory committee, and we'll to see how it works out. But it's a little bit more robust on the getting counties involved with getting new entrepreneurs out there, encouragement. So we'll see how it goes. Then I just went to United Way had a Minnesota Kids Count thing, talking about the welfare, the condition with kids, and different barometers throughout the state on welfare of kids and the well-being, health, and all kinds of different levels. Actually, the Senator Friends was there, and the representatives Constantine and Brandt were there, and I guess I was the only commissioner, so I even got to say a few words. Of course, I talked about the county, how we are obviously involved with kids to a big degree in a lot of ways. So yeah, so it was informative. It went well, and that actually was the 19th. So after that, yeah, the holidays took over. People from out of state came to visit. So yeah, I did. That was all I have for my report, Mr. Chair.
Good.
Will?
Okay, well, after our board meeting on the 17th, then we had the listening session with Senator Klobuchar. upstairs.
God, I forgot that.
Sure, you guys were all at that too, but that was excellent opportunity. And then Kip and I think you were on the phone conference too, weren't you, Mark? On
Yeah, I think I was.
Brown County
Yep.
JD 36
I didn't have that day on or something.
thing that we did after that. Of course, then we had the holiday reception after that, well attended by our employees. That's always a highlight of my year. And then on the 19th, I had the Wotton River Policy Committee meeting in St. James, and just kind of wrapping up a few year-end things there. And then yesterday, I attended the Investigators Conference down at the Civic Center, about 400 law enforcement officers from around the state that are attending the conference there. It's always a good conference, and it's a good thing to see that conference come to the city. I think it's a boost for our restaurants and
You know that's right.
hotels and stuff like that. And so that's my report.
Okay. Colleen?
Outside of the few things that have been mentioned already, the only thing I did was story hour. I was the reader.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Isn't
was
that fun?
Yeah, it is lots of fun.
Isn't that
Yeah.
fun?
Yep.
Everything's pretty well been mentioned, except we had planning and zoning supper, and thanked Lyle Femright for his years of service as the chair of the planning commission and all of his years of service on that. And a couple other incidental things, phone calls and whatnot, but otherwise it's pretty quiet for the holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of mine was already said also with the listening session, the cookie event or the holiday event we had. Then I skipped all the way up to yesterday, so I didn't have a meeting until yesterday. And
Wow, that's great.
Met with Bob, and we had our lunch with the staff yesterday. And I had grabbed onto a Towards Zero Death meeting, which since I got in late, they nominated me for some stuff.
That'll teach you.
That's what you get.
That's what I get for having lunch with staff. you
Yeah,
know.
but that was well worth it.
But that was well worth it. We have such amazing staff that it's awesome. But that's the end of that. Anybody want to? Let's see. We adjourn the meeting and go to our work session.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? We pass.